Very good. So I'm very glad to share my humble thoughts on the topic revisiting China-Philippines bilateral relations and maritime cooperation during the Duterte presidency and its legacy. But I will focus my discussions on Philippines-China relations during the Duterte presidency for focusing on legacies in bilateral maritime cooperation. So when President Duterte assumed his post in June 2016, his major foreign policy decision was to pursue friendly relationship with China. So rather than continuing the adversarial China policy of his predecessor, Duterte deliberately pursued a China-friendly policy, stressing that if we can have peace with China, I will be very happy. So this kind of paradigm shift in Philippines-China relations promoted what we call a rainbow after the rain, after suffering the lowest moment of Philippines-China relations during the Aquino administration, and the blooming of a beautiful flower that resulted in a rapid turnaround in bilateral ties. So Duterte's foreign policy strongly demonstrated the great paradigm shift in Philippines-China relations that facilitated maritime bilateral cooperation. So there was a notion that that the Philippines under Duterte was pivoting to China. For me, that was not accurate. There was no pivot to China. China is not the central point of Philippine foreign policy where Philippine foreign relations swing around because that is the concept of the pivot. While the Duterte presidency intentionally promotes friendly relationship with China, Philippine-China relation is not the cornerstone of Philippine foreign policy. It is just one of the many areas of Philippine foreign relations. In fact, this paradigm shift to China aim to shift from adversarial relations to comprehensive strategic cooperation and to shift gear from confrontation to cooperations. Because the Philippines has difficult relationship with China as a result of the South China Sea disputes. Being friendly with China is one of the many innovative and pragmatic approaches in order to overcome difficult issues with China. What Duterte did was not a pivot to China, but to reassert the constitutional mandate of independent foreign policy. Because if you will look economically, the Philippines has greater cooperation with Japan and South Korea rather than with China. And on defense and security matters, the Philippines continues to have a strong alliance with the United States and growing cooperation, defense cooperation with South Korea, Australia, and also Japan. And the Philippines also explored strategic cooperations with India, Russia, Israel, France, Germany, United Kingdom, and the like. So there was no pivot. Duterte was diversifying its foreign policy strategy in order to promote independent foreign policy. But the greatest legacy of Duterte for me is the establishment of Philippines-China bilateral consultative mechanisms in the South China Sea, already mentioned by my good friend Dr. Was Chun. And this mechanism is in fact very important because it is a very essential mechanism for building confidence. It is a tool for deepening mutual trust. It is an important step towards risk management and conflict avoidance in the South China Sea. The BCM also serves as an important platform to promote functional cooperation in the South China Sea. And more importantly, the BCM promoted several approaches in order to reduce misunderstanding, okay, for purposes of pursuing preventive diplomacy in the South China Sea. So through the BCM, the Philippines and China are now seriously involved in a series of peaceful dialogues and frank consultations to seriously promote functional cooperation, manage security risks, and decisively avoid military conflicts despite the persistent national differences in the South China Sea. Well, the first BCM was established when President Duterte visited China in 2016, and as a result of that, they held their first BCM in Guiyang-Gishu province of China in 2017. And this holding of the mechanism facilitated Coast Guard to Coast Guard cooperation and Navy to Navy exchanges, even regular port visits and other maritime cooperative undertakings among their fisheries organizations and maritime security organizations. But I would like to highlight the result of the fifth BCM in 2019 because it is in the fifth BCM that they created the Working Group on Political Security and fisheries cooperations, as well as the working group on marine scientific research and marine environmental protections. If you're only aware of the activities of these working groups, you will be inspired by the prospects for greater cooperations between the Philippines and China. And it was also during the PPCM when both countries discussed the details of their planned joint development of natural gas and oil in the South China Sea. And both parties can also pursue other joint maritime law enforcement cooperations and even coordinated search and rescue operation. However, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 disrupted the activities of the BCM, but in 2021, they held their 6th BCM virtually. And it was during this virtual meeting that they frankly exchanged on the following issues: current situation in the South China Sea, maritime issues between the two countries, and ways to further expand exchanges and cooperate on maritime search and rescue operations, fisheries management, ecological conservation, scientific research, and other areas like joint development and maritime law enforcement cooperations. So in other words, BCM provided enough platforms for the two countries in order to really promote maritime cooperations. Through the BCM, the Philippines and China have gone a long way to build confidence, promote common understanding, and pursue pragmatic cooperation in the South China Sea. Recent incidences, if not handled amicably by both parties as a result of unilateral actions on the ground, can destroy overnight all their efforts to strengthen their bilateral ties needed for actual cooperation to occur. So it is very important to really avoid, provocative unilateral actions by all parties in order to sustain the gains of bilateral maritime cooperations. So what are the achievements of the BCM? Well, first, the BCM has improved Philippines-China relations during the Duterte administration. It improved political relations, and this spilled over to economic relations in other areas. And the Philippines economically became one of the major recipients of China's official development assistance. And I will not discuss anymore all these details of economic relations, but let me stress that during the pandemic, China was the first country that provided the Philippines medical assistance to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And upon request of the Philippine government, China sent medical experts to the Philippines at the midst of the pandemic. And in 2021, China became the #1 source of COVID-19 vaccines, according to the Department of Health. And according to the latest SWS survey, majority of Filipinos prefer the use of Sinovac vaccines. And it also facilitated party-to-party diplomacy, which I will not discuss anymore. But I would like to highlight the importance of BCM in contributing to the calming of the overall security situation in the South China Sea. But I raise a caution that maybe this is a calm before the storm, but I hope we will not be able to suffer the storm. But if there is a storm in the South China Sea, we will overcome the storm. And the relative calm contributed to the fruitful negotiations on the COC and the implementation of the DOC, although it is very slow, but however slow, at least we can see that things are moving between the two countries in terms of maritime cooperation. So, as I said earlier, Duterte was shifting its gear in order to promote Philippines-China relations. And his legacy is the bilateral consultative mechanism in the South China Sea. And under the President-elect Bongbong Marcos, the Philippines wants China's ties to shift to a higher gear under his presidency. So if we shifted one, maybe we should have to shift to second, to third, and to higher gear in order to really sustain the gain of Philippines-China maritime cooperation. And how can we do that? For me, I have 4 suggestions in order to really shift to the higher gear in Philippines-China maritime cooperation. First, we have to continue to open all channels of communications between the two governments, and also not only between the two governments, but also among our people, through people-to-people contacts and greater exchange of non-governmental organizations and even think tanks like global governance institutions and like-minded institutions in the Philippines. We also have to intensify confidence building, because we need confidence building, greater confidence in order to promote mutual trust. And most importantly, we have to advance mutual respect. Although we have differences in the South China Sea, we have different national positions in the South China South China Sea, at the end of the day, we should emphasize that we still have to be kind to each other. We still need to promote good neighborliness among parties in the South China Sea. So with that note, thank you very much for your attention and have a good day.